If you've ever sat through a marketing 101 class, you know that people at a car dealership are taught that they're not really selling cars. What they're selling is freedom and adventure, luxury, and status. And it's kind of the same thing when you're shopping for hiking shoes. The people at the store are selling adventure too, but also three important things: stability, comfort, and dry feet. And in this video, I'll be explaining why these three things may not mean what you think they do, and how by making a couple of decisions before you head to the store, you can save time and money, and you stand to have a better hiking experience in the long run.
New toast to stability.
Stability, dear.
Alright, number one on the list of things hikers need is stability. It's also one of the hardest concepts to really get a grip on, but one thing that is important to know is that having a stable platform is important not just when hiking. And with some obvious exceptions, what our feet need from hiking shoes is really not that different from what they need from everyday shoes. In fact, very often when people run into issues during a hike, they're experiencing stability-related problems that they have every day, but that stay just below the surface because they're not doing as much distance or carrying a backpack. I talked about this to Paul Borgions, an award-winning podiatrist that works with many of Belgium's elite athletes, and he had some great insights into what our feet need, as well as a couple of simple tips to check whether a shoe offers enough stability.
When our foot is hitting the ground, we have a system to break that shock. We do a pronation movement. We really break the shock in our ankle. So a shoe must be able to also adapt that movement. Then when we come to the push-off, we have to come out that pronated movement to have a stable propulsion.
For a shoe, that means that it should not block the normal movement of your feet. And the more strenuous the activity, the higher the load that you carry, the more important it is to have a stable heel. Now you can test this yourself by pinching the heel part of the shoe and making sure that it's sturdy and gives you the necessary stability even after extended use.
When I take this shoe, I take the shoe this way. I push and this is really stable. When I take the shoe between my two hands and I push, he must be flexible at the toes, because that's very important for our push-off. So that's an important thing, and this is an important thing. And I think with those just two criteria, we will solve a lot of problems in general.
Okay, now that we know what to look for in terms of stability, the next question is, how high should your shoe be? Because if you ask people to draw a hiking shoe, most are probably going to draw some kind of boot with a high or mid-cut ankle. That is what people recognize as a hiking shoe, as a stable walking shoe. But is that really what we need?
Oh, back is high.
Is high? No. Rugged.
It's very manly.
Not manly enough.
It turns out a lot of it depends on what you want a shoe to deliver. I spoke about this to Koen Peers, who is a professor doctor in physical medicine at the University Hospitals in Leuven and the head of the Sports Medical Advice Center.
There are many trends over time. Soccer shoes were not the same 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago. Even so for hiking shoes, and for hiking, for instance, we used to have the high leather boots. And now we have also the trail running shoes that many people use. And it depends on what you want the shoe to deliver to you. If you aim primarily at performance and speed, for hiking you might prefer the trail running shoes. If you primarily want them to deliver stability, you might prefer the larger or higher leather boots.
So yeah, boots do help a little when it comes to stability, but very often people overestimate their role in preventing things like ankle sprains. Even a moderate amount of training exercise will do more for your stability than those couple of extra centimeters, that extra inch of fabric.
Stability might be created by the heel part of the shoe, but it's a specific stability-related musculature that can help you too. muscles like the peroneal muscles and the tibialis muscles, the effect of strengthening the muscles having this kind of effect, and then afterwards we can look at the shoe having this kind of effect.
And so what you often see is that hikers with a lot of experience who are well trained and know their body, especially when they're not hiking in terrain that's likely to hurt their ankles like sharp rocks or thorns, will opt for lower hiking shoes or for trail runners, which are basically just running shoes with added grip and a rock plate in the midsole. Here's Astrid Van Cleef, a sports doctor from Antwerp, who's also an avid hiker and ultra-marathon runner.
If I speak for myself, I always wear trail shoes. Also when I'm hiking, I don't use those high traditional hiking shoes because I know from myself that my ankles are quite stable, that I don't strain my ankle a lot. I think for more experienced hikers, I think a lower shoe is more comfortable, because also you lose more feeling with underground.
There are, of course, other considerations as well, and some of those might be quite important to you. Higher shoes, by the way, are also a good fit for people with insoles since you have more vertical space, obviously. In the end, when it comes to height, it's important to go with what feels good to you.
If you have experience and you say, I feel much better in a higher shoe, don't think why, wear it. Wear it. And we see the biomechanics, and then I can explain, yes, and that's the reason why you like this shoe. So it's good that you like this.
So, in conclusion, what should you know? What should you decide about stability? If you know that you just want a high-top shoe because that's what feels best to you, buy one. But don't just assume that you need one because low shoes feel unsafe or somehow don't look the part. If you're not sure, check this table and see what makes most sense to you. And whatever you buy, high or low, check the stability.
I guess I just really need some comfort right now.
Breathe in. That's a lovely cushion.
What does it mean for a shoe to be comfortable? I think there's a couple of aspects to this, and you can't have all of them at the same time, and sometimes there's also a trade-off with performance.
There are two most important things that you need to balance out. Is one, comfort, and two, performance. And sometimes it's a balance in between them, and they don't necessarily go along.
Cushioning is certainly not only about comfort, it's also about absorbing the ground reaction force. But just like the suspension of a car, it does affect your relationship to the ground and how smooth your ride is gonna be.
It's a pretty smooth ride.
But not too warm.
Thanks for cushioning my fall.
So you have to choose a sole thick enough to not feel every rock that it's gonna hurt, but it hasn't to be too thick that you don't feel how to move anymore. The more experienced you are, the thinner your sole can be.
In general, when your biomechanic is normal, you can walk barefoot on asphalt. If we walk and we have a normal pronation, we are breaking the shock and we don't need extra foam. Under our heel bone, we have a fat pad. And normally that fat pad, that's more than enough cushioning. If some people say, I feel better with that foam, it's okay, but we don't need it.
So if you like a plush shoe and it works for you, then that is perfect. Just don't let marketing fool you into thinking that you absolutely need a lot of cushioning. Because when you're running, you actually spend some of your time while flying in a way, and when you hit the ground, that impact can be up to 3 times your body weight. So that may call for some cushioning. But when walking or hiking, that'll be maybe 1.2 or 1.3 times your body weight. If you're in good health, your body can probably handle that. So that was cushioning, but many other factors impact comfort, like weight, for example. There's an old backpacking rule of thumb that you may have heard that says 1 pound of weight on your feet equals 5 pounds on your back. And while that may feel like a bit of an exaggeration, there is a couple of studies that do support the idea of heavy shoes being a real burden.
Another thing is also that the weight is also important. I see clients who can come injured because they are wearing too heavy shoes for their system.
We've talked about the sole and stability and the cushioning it provides, but shoes obviously also have an upper part that plays an important role in making sure that you are comfortable. I think there's a couple of questions that you have to ask yourself here, like what's more important to you on the trails that you're planning? Is it warmth or breathability? How important is durability to you? And do you mind your shoes needing a break-in period? Because though there are a crazy amount of brands and models out there, when you head to the shop, you will be confronted with the eternal and inevitable choice between leather and synthetics.
Leather? Leather. Leather, but in unexpected ways.
Half price on all leather items.
If you take good care of it, it is considerably more durable than most synthetic uppers, and it's very unlikely to tear on you. In most cases, the outsole will give out before the upper does, but most major brands allow you to resole leather hiking shoes for about €100, $100. Now, I don't have any numbers on how many people actually do resole their shoes, and I'm not sure that percentage is all that high, but if you do, that will at least partially offset the initial higher price of full leather hiking boots. Leather will adapt to the shape of your foot, which is a great feeling, but that will take a while, and not giving yourself enough time to break in leather shoes before a long hike is a mistake you will likely only make once. Synthetic shoes, provided they're right for you, should fit right from the store. Leather has natural waterproofing and some level of breathability, but it doesn't lend itself to every climate. I would say that the closer you get to alpine conditions, the more leather tends to shine. With synthetics, I think you could argue that you often get less shoe for less money. And that is a good thing because it means less weight and more breathability, because you often get some kind of a mesh upper instead of a closed leather upper, making them more comfortable in warmer climates and especially for people with sweaty feet. However, getting less shoe can also be a bad thing because hiking and trail running shoes can sometimes be frustratingly non-durable.
I have to buy, I think, 5 or 6 pairs a year. Most of the time, for myself, if I find some good shoes, it's difficult to change.
Though part of that admittedly also has to do with the fact that the kind of rubber that they use, the kind of rubber that gives the best stickiness, the best grip, is just inherently less durable than the rubber used for example, for road running shoes. Most brands have some kind of guide number of miles that you can do with a shoe before you have to replace it. I personally think that the science behind those numbers is a bit thin, but of course you should think about buying new shoes if the upper is torn or your sole no longer has enough grip or the heel is no longer straight. Alright, last thing I want to say about comfort is that whatever other choices you make, be it high or low or leather or synthetics, your number one concern should be fit. And they should fit your feet.
They don't fit!
I'm always a bit annoyed when people ask for shoe advice online and someone in the comments is like, the only brand worth wearing is Loa or Hoka or Merrell or whatever. If you don't know anything about the other person's feet, that is honestly just a dumb answer. This is not the time to follow the majority, unless perhaps you're, I don't know, if you're part of triplets, go ahead. So try stuff out, try different brands in person. Shoes should have a solid, confident fit in the back, wiggle room in the front, so make sure you can move your toes, and not too much pressure on the ankles. Most people tend to buy their hiking shoes too small. Now I'm blessed with 2 feet that are different sizes, so one of my shoes is always either too big or too small. And from decades of experience, I can tell you that too small is way worse. If a shoe is too large, you will feel it in the back because your heel will move around. Okay, if you have wide feet, you'll be happy to hear that more and more brands are making wide versions of their most popular models.
When you have a wide foot, you need a wide shoe, otherwise it will give you too much compression. It can give irritation of nerves in between the bones of the foot. Wearing a shoe that is wider than your foot, it will make your movement unstable.
if you can't find something that fits your feet exactly, don't hesitate to take a look at the women's collection or the men's collection if you're a woman, because they're just a little different in terms of fit, but the styling in hiking shoes usually is pretty neutral anyway.
Try and keep your feet dry.
It's pouring rain out. Rain is my favorite too. You love wet feet.
Most hiking shoes sold today, here in Belgium at least, have some kind of waterproof membrane, usually Gore-Tex. And that figures because nobody wants to hike in wet shoes. But what many people don't know is that there are basically two schools of thought when it comes to keeping your feet dry. The first school stipulates that the important thing is to prevent your shoes from getting wet inside. But the second school says, if you sometimes hike in rainy conditions, if you head far enough out into the wild, on longer trails, your shoes will eventually get wet. The important thing, those people say, is to make sure that they dry quickly when that happens. And so ask yourself which of those makes more sense to you given the hikes that you plan to do. Because there's no right or wrong here. I can't give you any definitive advice. But I will say two things. Number one, if you hate the thought of hiking in the rain, then don't buy waterproof hiking shoes. Because you're probably going to stay in anyway. So you'll save money because the waterproof versions are usually more expensive. And when you do hike, your feet will be happier in a well-ventilated shoe. Number two, if you do decide to buy waterproof shoes, make sure that they don't get wet on the inside, for example, from water just running down your legs, because they may be very good at keeping water out, but when they get wet, they take ages to dry. And if they're made of leather, it can be tricky to dry them next to a heat source like a fire without damaging leather. So if you've sat through all of this, you now know that you have some decisions to make before you head to the store.
Well, then that's all I needed to hear.
That's it. I'm going shopping.
I think it's a good idea to decide on 5 things. Do I want a high or a low shoe? Do I want a lot of cushioning or am I okay with less? Do I want a shoe that's as light as possible? Do I want leather or synthetics? And do I want a waterproof shoe? Now, obviously, if you're still on the fence about a couple of those things, that is more than okay. But those questions will probably narrow it down far enough for you to be able to fit every model in the store that meets your criteria. So you can be sure that you find the one that really fits you best. All right, let me finish up with a couple of tips. Don't get hung up on price. There are decent hiking shoes for every budget, and if you can't afford expensive shoes, don't just assume that they are somehow intrinsically better, because that's not how it works. And don't pay for extras like waterproofing or leather unless you're sure that you need them. Make sure that you fit your shoes in conditions as close as possible to hiking conditions. So take your favorite hiking socks with you, and if you wear insoles, obviously you should bring those too. Oh, and don't go shopping in the morning because your feet will swell a bit during the day. In a perfect world, shoe salesmen would be paid double in the afternoon because there's really no good reason for shoe stores to be open in the morning at all. And lastly, take your time. Visiting a few more stores is more than worth it if it makes your feet happy. And if you do it on foot, it counts as training for your next hike. All right, that's it for now. From the interviews I did, I got some really interesting tidbits about preventing injury and when to consider insoles and all kinds of stuff about minimalist shoes. But this was already a long video, so I will save those for another time. Many thanks for watching and see you next time.